Hey everyone, my name is Emily Newman. I'm the founder of If I Made, and we're so excited to have you on today's webinar. I'm here with Cam Palmer of Beautiful Event Rentals. Cam, thank you again for being here and taking time out of your day. I know it's been a crazy few weeks to share with us, kind of your story and how you're managing this epidemic and everything that's going on.
Yeah, it's crazy. Thanks for having me here. I'm so excited to talk with all of you and just dive into some mindset and perspective and how to survive this uncertainty. And one of my girls, who I think is on here, we keep saying, if one more person says uncharted territory, I swear they're going to go crazy. So we are going to go through this and talk about some different ways to survive and go through everything. So to start, though, I would love to know who all is here. If you can put, I know that I own a rental company. I know there's likely some rental companies who are here. But if you can say what your name is, what type of business that you might be in, and where you actually live or where you reside. I'm here in Dallas, Texas, and so I'd love to know where everybody is. So if you can put that in the chat roll, and then Emily, I think we have a handout.
Yep, I'm going to go ahead and put that up for everyone.
Awesome. So a florist in Atlanta, a cake designer in Scottsdale, Arizona. I used to live in Scottsdale, so that's fun. Anna in Chicago, Sam in Arizona, who's been frozen by a bank, I'm sure. Okay, so if you can download this handout, and then if we can also put up the slides that I had as well, that'd be awesome, and we'll get started.
Great. And Cam, do you see the arrows on your end?
I do. Okay, I see them. That's great. Awesome. So if you want to download your workbook or your worksheet, you're welcome to take a pen and paper and write down things that we talk about today. But I also put together this handout. If you can't get to it right now, or if you want to later, you can always rewatch this webinar and fill that out as we go. But on the first page, there talks about a couple different things. So I hope you're in a place where you have good Wi-Fi and things don't freeze up. But if they do, know it's being recorded, I believe.
Yes, everyone's going to receive a replay link of the class later on. So if y'all have to hop off or come back, or everyone will get a replay of the class.
And then if you want to make sure that you have some room around where you're at. Sometimes when we are in webinars or we're in teaching classes, you get a little stir crazy. I know that I do sometimes. And so I might ask you to wiggle in your seat a little bit just to keep your energy up. I encourage you to write down things, because I know that for myself, when I write things down, I remember it more. You're actually 5 times more likely to remember something if you write it down. And so if there's something that resonates with you, please write it down. Also, if you have this PDF printed out, all that, and then I ask that you come into this session with an open heart and an open mind. You might have some preconceived ideas before getting here of how you may have gotten here and how your business has gotten to the place it is today. But what got you here might not get you there on the other side of this crazy unknown. So I ask that you come in with an open heart and an open mind to listen and to talk about things. So back to the chat roll, we have a whole bunch of people. We have some rental companies, some stationary people, lots of people in there. So that's awesome. I'm so glad that we have so many different people. So who am I? Why am I qualified to talk about uncertain times and how to survive them? Well, hi, I'm Cam. I own a rental company here in Dallas, Texas, and I've been in the events industry for a decade, a whole 10 years. In 2010, I started a wedding planning company in Phoenix, Arizona. And then in 2012, opened up a rental company. And in 2014, moved to Dallas, Texas. And so I have started multiple companies, and I've had to restart my current company in a new state. And so with those, there's been uncertain times. I'm going to tell you a little bit about my past and my story. And just know that I have been through really some crappy situations, and there's been a lot of unknown. And I know that you too, being in here, you likely have gone through some really crappy things as well. And maybe have gone through a season of unknown, or a season of things that may have been unsure of what the next steps were. And so about a decade ago, my family's home burned down from a lightning strike and a fire. And after that, we lost everything. Everything was gone. The only things we had was what was on our backs and what was in our cars. And from that situation, having everything taken away from me and my family, and similar to what's going on right now, everything has essentially been taken away from us. Maybe some of our staff mates, some of our team, all of our income, or most of our income, things have been taken away from us. And so how did we get on the other side of a disaster happening? We had to choose our mindset, and we had to choose our perspective and how we were showing up. I've also, when I said that I moved to Dallas, Texas in 2014, it was after a really bad divorce. And knowing that I was signing up to be a single mom, I found out I was pregnant 4 days after moving, which was incredibly tough. And so I was going into a season of, holy crap, I'm about to be a single mom and I'm starting my business over again. I have no clue what the future looks like. And so how I've gotten through some different difficult seasons is how I'm approaching this new season of unknown and uncertainty and getting on the other side of it. And so I encourage that you maybe look back at your own life and think about maybe something that has gone through in your life that was tough and unknown, and take some of those experiences of how you got from there to the next place. And so we're going to talk about that a little bit today. The first thing I want you to do, and it's on your worksheet, and if you don't have the worksheet out, which by the way, that is able to be edited on your computer. So if you download it, it is a working PDF. If you can print it out, that's great too. But the very first thing on there is I want you to define how you're feeling right now. Right now, in this moment, maybe you're feeling better today, but maybe a few weeks ago you were feeling a different way. But I want you to define how you feel. Do you feel frustrated? Do you feel nervous? Maybe you're angry at the situation, and that's okay. How do you feel currently right now in this season? Maybe you are in denial that it's even happening, or feeling like you're out of control. But I want you to define specifically, how are you feeling in this moment? I think it's important to know how we feel so that we know how to take those feelings and make them work for us in this season. So write down what you are feeling. The next thing we're going to talk about is how do we get from this place of fear or anxiety or unknown? How do we get from these feelings, which are totally normal? I encourage you to have these feelings because it makes you human. Sometimes I feel like we go on social media and we only talk about all the good things, which I do as well. I think there's nothing wrong with that. By no means do you want to put your dirty laundry on social media, but I think we get in these feelings of everything's okay and everything's great all the time, but really internally we're feeling fearful and anxious and out of control. And so I think it's important to define those feelings and know that it's okay to have those feelings. There's no reason to feel ashamed for the way you're feeling because it's normal. I mean, when the whole world shuts down, it's normal to feel a little fearful and anxious. So know that that's okay. But how do we take these feelings of fear and anxiety and nervousness and turn them into something that works for us and something that we can use leverage against? So define how you're feeling right now. So we're going to talk about how those feelings get us to where we need to go, and that comes through perspective and mindset. And so perspective, I'm going to read you the definition specifically. But perspective has two different definitions, and one is one of my favorites. So the first one is a particular attitude toward or way of regarding something, a point of view. It's how you view something. The second definition is the art of drawing solid objects on a two-dimensional surface so as to give the right impression of their height, width, depth, and position in relation to each other when viewed from a particular point. Well, I like that one a little bit more because if you remember maybe a decade or two ago, there were pictures of somebody standing way back here and somebody standing here, and they put their little hand underneath it, and it looks like somebody's dancing on top of their hand or standing on top of their hand. Or you take maybe a large object like the Grand Canyon or the Leaning Tower of Pisa or something like that. And you stand in a place that looks like you're standing on it, or you're leaning up against it, or you're doing something that looks like you're bigger than you actually are. And so how do we take this perspective of the way that we view something from a particular point? So maybe we take this situation of unknown. We're viewing this from a lens of unknown and fear and anxiety, but the way that we view what's going on can really alter what we are perceiving this situation to be. And so if you take that analogy and you say, I'm looking at this in a lens of fear and anxiety and unknown, well, if we shift that slightly and we shift it to thinking, instead of this being a really crappy situation, which it is, viewing it for something, maybe it's happening for me to get out of a certain sense of who I am. Maybe, and here I'm going to go to the next slide, maybe you can shift your perspective to thinking, how is this happening to me, to how is this happening for me? So instead of saying, oh, this sucks, it really is terrible, how is this happening for us to help us adapt or shift or pivot into something that is good for us, and it's good for our companies, and it's good for our teams, and it's good instead of being crappy. John Maxwell is one of my favorite leaders in the leadership space. Me, as a leader of my company, I look up to John in multiple things. And last week he did a webinar series, and one thing that stood out to me was he said crisis bumps us from comfort zone to creative zone. And I think that's really important, because I think when we get going and we're doing our business as normal and as usual, and we're doing the emails and we're doing the deliveries and making the flowers or making the cakes or working with the clients or whatever we're doing, sometimes we get stuck in a comfort zone of this is just how it goes. And I think crisis or things that happen to us are really happening for us to bump us from that comfort zone to a creative zone, a zone of the mundane and the things that we always do to something that is going to alter us and change us for the better, and for something that's going to make our companies and make who we are stronger and wiser on the other side. And so instead of thinking about however long this pandemic and nationwide shutdown is going to be, instead of thinking, well, how long is this going to last and how long until I can get back to the normal? Well, it's probably not going to look normal on the other side like it did a month ago or 2 months ago. It's likely going to look different. And the sooner that we know that and realize that, the sooner then we can be creative and figure out how does our businesses look on the other side. And so I love this quote. I'm going to read it again because I think it's really great. Crisis bumps us from comfort zone to creative zone. And so I think that's really important to think about and to remember. And if you're like me, maybe you print this out and put it on your mirror or put it in your workspace. But I think it's so true, and I think we need to remember that. The next thing we're going to talk about is mindset. So we talked about perspective. Let's talk about mindset. Mindset is the established set of attitudes held by somebody. You'll notice that between the two definitions, it talks a lot about your attitude and the way that you show up. And attitude doesn't necessarily need to look like my 5-year-old son who has the attitude with me when I say, no, it's time for nap time. But the attitude of how we show up with our communities and with our friends and with our teams and with each other, wherever you are social distancing with people. Maybe it's on a happy hour over Zoom, but they're both talking about attitudes. And so if we take both of these definitions, mindset and perspective, we know that the only way to have a good mindset or a good perspective is to change and alter our attitude in our being of who we are and how we show up. And so I think that's really important to notice between the two the two definitions. I think it's really great. So with mindset, there's a book that I really love. It's called Mindset, and it's by Carol Dweck. I encourage you to read it, especially in this downtime. But it talks about the difference between two different types of mindset. The mindset that is a growth mindset and a fixed mindset. And so how I view both of those is a growth mindset is having an optimistic way of viewing the world and what you're faced with. When hard times come and when hardship is present, it's our optimistic way of viewing it. And a fixed mindset is thinking, well, what got me here is going to get me there. And staying put and staying with what works and leaning on that. And I think everybody has a little bit of both of these mindsets. I think I have both of them. I think I have more of a growth mindset than a fixed mindset, but easily I can get stuck in old habits or the way that things have always been done and think that, well, it works, it has always worked, so it's always going to work. But I think it's important to identify that there are two different mindsets, and how do we react and how do we show up with our attitude in seasons of discomfort, which is where we're at, in seasons of normalcy. In normalcy, we might show up with a fixed mindset, thinking everything's great and I'm going to keep doing this, which by all means, there's a time and a place for that. But in a time and place right now, I think it's more important than ever to have a growth mindset, something that is an optimistic way of viewing the world at large and in our society and in our communities. So there's the difference between the growth and the fixed. I encourage you, again, read the book. It's called Mindset. I think the tagline to it is like a psychology something, but it's by Carol Dweck. You can get it on Amazon. You don't even have to go out to the store to get it. And I think we need the growth mindset more than ever right now. Anything worthwhile is uphill, and I think anything that is happening and that's good for our business is going to be an uphill battle. It's going to be something that challenges us and changes us. And right now it's more than ever happening. And so just knowing that and having the growth mindset perspective. 3 things to consider that I encourage you to just think about and see how you can intertwine these into your day and your life and how you show up with your attitude with these 2 perspectives is choosing joy. One of our core values in our company is we choose joy every freaking day. It says it in our core values. We choose joy every freaking day. Because why? Because we can change and we can show up with our attitude in a way that is good and pleasing and something that alters us to be better versions of ourselves. We choose to have the mindset and the perspective of choosing joy. We also decide that we want to be community oriented. We here in Dallas have a couple different groups that we've started within the events industry. So if you live here in Dallas, please reach out to me. I'd love to invite you into those groups. But how can we be more community oriented in a world that tells us we have to social distance and not be around other people? I'm sure if you're like me, you've gotten tons of emails in your inbox about webinars like this and ways to show up for happy hours or coffee dates or things like that. But how can we become more community oriented than maybe we were 4 weeks ago or 6 weeks ago before all this happened? And then be intentional. Be super, uber, crazy intentional with everything that we're doing. So between choosing joy, community-oriented, and being intentional, what are some examples of how this happens? What can you specifically, tangibly do to include all of these 3 things into your daily lives? Well, a couple ideas that I have for you is write intentional notes, like an actual physical note, not an email, like a physical note card. If you don't have note cards, printer paper, Amazon still delivers. Like, do an actual written note and have it show up at a vendor friend of yours doorstep, or maybe your clients. Being at home, they're actually probably checking their mail and excited for something fun to come in the mail. So if you choose joy and intentionality and community oriented, write physical notes to some of your vendor friends and clients. Set up video happy hours or coffee dates. We, in our marketing, we like to really pour into our vendors who are a part of our business and refer people to us and are just a joy to be around. And so we're in the middle of setting up some coffee dates. Instead of going to coffee or buying them coffee, because we can't go to coffee shops, they're all closed, set up virtual coffee dates with people or happy hours or whatever you typically do. Set those up. Be intentional about them. Have a plan of how you want to pour into them instead of thinking it's all about me and it's all about how can you bring me business. Pour into them. Be community oriented. Call someone to check in on how they're really doing. Like really doing. Not their social media way of how they're doing, but how are they really doing? Are they stressed out? Are they feeling the same feelings that you had written down at the very beginning of this webinar? Call them up. Text them, do something like that. I have a couple different friends of mine here in Dallas that we just text each other every so often, once a week at least, and we just say, hey, how are you really doing today? Like not how are you, like the sky is blue and it's sunny out, but how are you doing? And then when feelings of fear come up or anxiety, have a Wonder Woman pose. What do I mean by a Wonder Woman pose? So I told you at the beginning of this, I want you to find some space to wiggle around, but I want you to stand up right where you're at, if you can. I'm already standing because I like to teach while I'm standing, but stand up right where you're at if you can. And you're welcome to look at the TED Talk by Amy Cuddy. She had talked about our perspective and the way that we show up. And so we're going to do a Wonder Woman pose. Why is this important? Well, Amy Cuddy on her TED Talk talked about two different people going in for a really stressful job interview. One, in the very beginning, had their arms kind of hunched over, and they were internalizing everything, and they were just like, woe is me, I'm just sitting here like all to my lonely self. And then the other one had a Wonder Woman pose. Which one came out with the job interview offer? The Wonder Woman person. And so when we're feeling these feelings of fear and anxiety and all the things that we can think of that make us stressed or whatever you want to call it, have a Wonder Woman pose. And if you're a man in here, then have a Wonder Man pose, but the same applies. It's all the same. So what I want you to do is evaluate how you're standing right now. Are you crossing your ankles? Are you leaning to the side like I often do? How are you standing right now? And I want you to spread your feet apart, hip distance apart, and stand where you're at. Now look at your back. Is your back kind of hunched forward like we all do, or how are you standing? I want you to put your shoulders back, stand up tall, and act like you have a string going all the way through your spine and through the top of your head. Lift your head up tall and stand right there. And now, if you're not holding your computer like Emily, you look like you're doing, but if you're not holding your computer, put your hands on your hips with your shoulders back, your head up tall, and your feet hip distance apart. How do you feel now? Do you feel like you can conquer the world? Do you feel like you can be confident in going forward? Or do you still feel the fear and anxiety and stress that you normally have been feeling the last 2 weeks? When you get into those slumps and when you get into the fear monger happening, get into the Wonder Woman pose. It will change your perspective on everything. I promise you that. And I encourage you to go look at the TED Talk. You can sit down now. Or you can stand like that the rest of it. I don't care. You do what you want to do. But I encourage you to go look up. You can go to YouTube and say TED Talk by Amy Cuddy. It's a really encouraging one. It's about 21 minutes long, and so she talks through an experiment that they went through and all of that, but she talks about the Wonder Woman pose and how it changes lives all over the place, and I believe it. All right, we're going to shift slightly. We're going to shift into some tangible things that you can be doing now. So we've talked about our perspective, we've talked about mindset and how we show up with our attitude and the way that we present ourselves. Now we're going to get into some nitty-gritty, what can we actually do from here? So we're going to look at your goals. So on your sheet, you should have a thing that says goals I had at the start of 2020 and new goals that I have now. If you have a team or if you have people still left on your team after all this craziness. I encourage you to not write anything into the goals going forward area. I encourage you to do that with your team after we go through all of what we're going through. So don't write anything in there now. And even if you don't have a team, I give you my cell phone number at the end. You're welcome to text me or call me, and I'm happy to bounce those ideas with you. So with your goals for 2020, I want you to write down specifically, if you remember them or if you have them down, what were some of the goals that you had put in to the very beginning of the year? Or maybe you do them in December of 2019 for 2020, but what are some of the goals that you had for 2020? Write it down. It might have looked like a certain dollar in revenue for 2020. Maybe you wanted to bring in $500,000 worth of revenue, or $1 million worth of revenue, or $5 million worth of revenue. What did you have for revenue goals this year? What about your staffing? Did you have a certain number of staff? Or did you have a plan that you wanted to hire in June of this year? What were some of the goals that you specifically had before all this crazy, crappy things are happening? Write down all of your goals. I think it's important to know, what did we want to do? And it might not happen this year. And we have to be okay with that. It might not happen this year. We're only 3 months in, which I have to keep reminding myself, we're only 3 months in. But we're only 3 months in. Like, there's still 9 more months of things to do, and this could all be done in a month, and you should still have those goals. And maybe they'll happen this year. Maybe if you're in the toilet paper market, maybe you're doing really good, but maybe those goals will happen. But we also need to make sure that we're okay if they don't. They might not. They might need to go to 2021. And by gosh, I hope 2021 is better than how 2020 is going right now, but write them down. Have them someplace. And if you didn't do goals at the beginning of the year, put some goals that maybe you had in your mind, but write it down. And be okay that if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. And then we are going to talk about, how do we figure out what our new goals are? So this has happened, and it's unfortunate, but now we are faced with a comfort zone versus creative zone mentality of, if this isn't going to happen now, how can we pivot and alter and adapt to what our new reality might look like? And understanding that it might not look like it did 6 months or 6 weeks ago. And that's okay. We're going to get creative. We're going to adapt. We're going to pivot and get into a better place than maybe we were 6 months ago or 6 weeks ago. So your new goals, you're going to come up with new goals. And again, I encourage you to do it with your team. But how do we get there? Well, one of my favorite people in the world is Rachel Hollis. I don't know if you are familiar with her, but she has this thing called idea soup. What is an idea soup? What might you ask? An idea soup is like a brain dump of all the things that you think that you can do in your business. And so we're going to do a little idea soup together. And so I want you to think about your own company, whether it be florals or cake designing or rentals or whatever it is that you do. And we're going to write it down. So I did a mini idea soup. My idea soups typically look about 2 to 3 times as many things that are down here. But what are some things that you can do physically right now? Some of the ideas on here are gift cards. What if you put together some gift cards for the events that will happen, because people are going to be urging to get out of their house and do an event? Or what if it's creating all those new projects that you said you wanted to create? Well, now you've got the time to do it. Brainstorming a new marketing strategy. Again, what got you here might not get you there, and so brainstorming what a new marketing strategy looks like. Or an ebook. People are on their computers and iPhones more than ever, so creating an ebook. Or finally creating that annual budget that you say you're going to do every year, and you say you're going to do it before the first quarter ends, and it never happens. I've been there, I get it. Virtual meetings with clients, or contacting all of your existing clients, or hosting micro events, updating your SOPs. What does that look like for you? If you're a florist, I've seen people here in Dallas, they are doing floral deliveries. So you can't have your wedding anymore. Well, all of my clients, I'm going to do a little flower arrangement and send it to them. I saw that there's some cake people in here. What if that looks like people are still celebrating birthdays and people are still celebrating anniversaries. What if you made birthday cakes or anniversary cakes for people instead of wedding cakes that you can't do because there's no weddings right now? What if you did that? Or if you had weddings on the books for this coming weekend or 2 weekends from now, what if you make them a small little cake that they can still enjoy on what would have been their wedding day? I encourage you to use your team. Start to put some idea soup items on here, but use your team or use me. And again, I have my cell phone number at the end of this. And come up with some ideas that you can do right now, or you can do to work on your business right now if you can't do anything like florists. I know here in Dallas, all of the flowers are sold out everywhere. Wholesalers are out, grocery stores are out. So think about it tangibly also. If flowers are out in your area, then you probably can't do flowers at home. But think about all the things that you can do. We've been foraging the neighborhood. That's awesome. I love the thinking outside the box. And then from that idea soup, we're going to make a roadmap. In my core values as a company, we have roadmaps. And this morning, Kaylee, who's on my team, her and I are, we just talked this morning about, okay, what is our plan for this week and what are we doing and all of that. And we even said, okay, we need a roadmap for every single day because every single day is different. So you can have a roadmap for every single day, or you can have a roadmap for your whole business, or you can have a roadmap for different areas of your business. But having a roadmap is the only thing that will get you from here to there with a plan of action. We believe in plans of action and results being made versus just throwing something at the wall and hoping it sticks. And so we're going to do a little roadmap. So take one of those things that you had put on your sheet. I'm going to take, I have notes because why not? I'm going to take rescheduling all of your events within the CDC's 8-week time frame, which I think goes to May 16th. So rescheduling all of those events. So what is the goal date that I want to get those done? So in that square, in that box, you're going to put reschedule all of my spring events. And then for your goal date, when do I actually want to have this completed by? So you might say April 1st. And then what are some smaller tasks that help me get that bigger task done? So if you're rescheduling, and if you were on the webinar last week with Paige with the Creative Law Shop, you might reach out to your lawyer to see what is it that you need to add to your contract or take away to your contract. Do you need a new contract? Do you need an addendum? What is it that you need to do legally wise to reschedule those people to the new date? You might also have a phone call with each of those people, whatever. You might have a phone call, or you might have an email, a really nice written intentional email, or you might do a handwritten note. But what does your communication look like? So you're going to take your big task, pair it with a goal date, and what are the specific smaller tasks that help get that one big thing done by the goal date? And so you're welcome to take that sheet and make copies of it and use it forever or for however long you want to. But think about this from your goal date, your smaller tasks. How can you get these things done? Have a goal. Have a roadmap. How are you going to get through it? And you can even, like I said, have it for each day because we do. And then we also need to define what are some limiting beliefs that we have. What are some things that hold us back from getting to the other side in one piece? What are some of those limiting beliefs? And so you have a whole page. And so we're going to do a little practice together. And I want you to write down specifically, nobody's looking at your paper. Nobody's looking at your PDF. You don't have to share this with anybody. So what you say or what you write down, be honest with yourself. So what are some limiting beliefs that you have about accomplishing some of these new goals? I know that I have limiting beliefs, and I have certain things that help me from getting into those limiting beliefs like fear or anxiety. And so I want you to think about, let's say, 3 things that might be a limiting belief. And if you don't have 3, then more power to you. But what are 3 things that you might say in the car on your way home from work? or after a client sends you a nasty email because you don't want to refund their money from a rescheduled date. Or what do you say to yourself after your kids scream at you because you're on your computer working and not playing with them? What do you say to yourself? That might be a limiting belief. For me, something that I've always kind of struggled with or had as a limiting belief is I didn't go to traditional school, or sorry, I'm not smart enough to do this business, or I'm not smart enough to lead my team. And so then I want you to define why. Why is it that you don't feel like you're smart enough? Or why is it that you feel like what you produce or the work that you put out isn't good enough? Or why do you feel the thing that you feel? Why is that? So if I say that I don't feel like I'm smart enough to lead my team, or if I don't feel like I'm smart enough to lead this business, I might say, well, it's because I didn't go to a traditional college. I've just done it. I've just figured it out. And so that might be a why to why I feel that way. So write down 3 things that you feel like are limiting beliefs, that maybe you truly do believe it about yourself, or maybe it's just one of those things that you say on a bad day. But what are 3 things that you say are a limiting belief, and also attach it with why? Why do you feel that way? After you have that done, and you're welcome to come back to this if you need to, but after you have that done, then I want you to write down a big 3-letter word after it. It's B-U-T, but. I'm not smart enough because I didn't go to traditional school, but, and then followed up with a statement that empowers you to keep going. But I can arm myself with the knowledge to lead this team. I don't produce great content because I have never been confident in it, but I can figure it out. Or but I can do, I can create a power statement anytime that I'm feeling this way. Like, create something that says, this is how I might feel on a bad day. This is why, and whether it's a good enough why or not, you have a why to why you feel a certain way. But this, but I am strong enough, but I am confident, but whatever it is that you need to follow it up with. Because the times that are hard, it will still come. I know that 3 weeks ago, I had a really crappy day because I walked in the office and everything was off the books. Well, I had feelings of fear and anxiety and not good feelings. But I decided to pick myself back up and stand back up and say, but I can figure it out. But I'm optimistic. But I can show up anyways. And so bad times are going to come. If they haven't come for you already, then that's awesome. I hope it doesn't come to you. But if it does, and if things get worse than they already are, you're going to have crappy days. And you're going to have people who are not excited with the way that you're deciding to do something after this is all done. So you're going to have it. You're going to have those terrible thoughts. So do something about it now before it happens. On maybe it's not sunny in your area, but on a sunny day like today, that you might be feeling a little bit more joyful and a little bit more empowered after this session. Think about the things that might happen later and how you're going to feel and why you might feel that way, and back it up with a statement that's empowering and that's strong and makes you confident and makes you joyful. I encourage you to do it now before anything else happens, because gosh, it probably will, unfortunately. So if it doesn't feel good in the moment, if you don't feel like you can do it, please come back and watch it. But I encourage you to do it. I'm writing a book right now, and one of the things that I put in my book is this quote: "A limiting belief only has power over you if you give it the authority to." It only has power. I can continue to think that I'm not smart enough to run this company, but it only has power if I let it. But if I back it up by saying, not even saying the statement, but by saying I'm arming myself with the knowledge and I'm figuring it out and I'm trying to choose the next right thing, then it doesn't even give it the authority to make me feel crappy and to make me feel anxious and to make me feel fearful. And so give your power statements of how strong you really are. And whether you've been doing this for 6 months, which it's a really crappy first 6 months of your business, I'm so sorry about that. Whether you've been doing it for 6 months or 2 years or 5 years or 20 years, it sucks and we're gonna get through it. And so know that you've gotten to this place where you're actually showing up for a webinar that tells you about how to strategically go to the next place, but know that you are strong enough and you are confident enough. The fact that you haven't backed down yet after this craziness that has happened shows me that you are strong enough. You've gotten through 2 or 3 weeks of crap, and you can get through however long it takes to get out of this. But you are strong enough. You are confident. You are smart, and you can figure it out. We all have figured it out, and we can figure it out. This isn't the first time we've had an angry client. This isn't the first time we've lost a deal. This isn't the first time that we've had to have tough conversations with staff. This isn't the first time that you have felt the feeling of fear or anxiety. I guarantee you, if you are in business at all for any amount of time, you have felt some sort of fear or anxiety or unknown at some point, and you've gotten through it. And so take those things that you have lived through in the past and get to the other side, because you can, and I know you will. So some tangible takeaways. So if you haven't had a tangible takeaway yet, then here are some extra ones for you to take away. First thing I want you to think about is, what are some of your life's deepest passions? What are the things that get you out of bed in the morning? What are the things that you are deeply passionate about? And if it's flowers, or if it's cakes, or if it's rentals, or if it's photography, or if it's whatever it is, define that. Figure out what is it that you are passionate about, and then take it a step further and think, what else am I passionate about? For me, I'm passionate about education. I'm passionate about teaching others and seeing someone go from a state of worry or fear and seeing them get to the other side more confident. That's what I'm passionate about, and so that's what we're doing. So figure out for you, maybe it's not education. Maybe it's helping the sick and the poor. Maybe it's, and if you're a florist, for example, because I see Huntress Florals right here on my chat roll, that's why I'm using flowers so often, because it's right there. If it's a florist and you are passionate about the sick and you're passionate about the people who maybe don't have it as well off, maybe you take your flowers and do something in that realm. Figure out what is it that you're passionate about. I think it's important to define it, because maybe that's your new avenue. Maybe weddings is still an avenue, but then you also have this other avenue over here that takes care of the poor and the sick. Diversify and figure out, what else are you passionate about other than weddings? I hope you have other passions than weddings. I love weddings so much. I love corporate events. I love all these things, but I have other passions. And so how can you take your current model of your business and adapt to new passions that you might have? Figure it out. I'm sure you have some passions outside of the wedding industry. We all do, hopefully. Another tangible takeaway is I have a little business expense sheet. So this has helped me and some other companies as well. I've shared it with a couple other people. But on the very last page of your handout, there should be, hopefully it works, a clickable button that says click for spreadsheet or something like that. Click on that spreadsheet, and before you do anything at all, I want you to save it, make a copy and save it for yourself. Because if you start editing on that, it's a Google sheet, and I'll be able to see your edits, and so will everybody else. So make a copy, go to File, and then make a copy and rename it to your business. But you're going to take, there's two different sheets. So there's the business expense sheet, and then there's another business expense sheet. I want you to take all the things that you're paying for 4 weeks ago or 6 weeks ago or whenever all this crazy happened, and write down all the things that you are paying for. You can take this from your P&L report, which is your profit and loss report from QuickBooks or wherever you do accounting. or just look at your bank statement or your credit cards. Figure out what is it that you are paying for on an annual basis or monthly basis or quarter basis. The kick here, though, is, for example, the CPA. If you only pay your CPA once a year to file your taxes, you're only going to put it under the annual tab. If you pay for bookkeeping and you do that on a quarterly basis, you only check in 4 times a year, you're only going to put it under the quarter tab. And then if you have credit card interest and fees, if you have any credit card, you have monthly fees. And if you don't, awesome. But put that under monthly. What do you pay monthly for those things? And so it all should, and if it doesn't, please tell me, because there's something wrong with the spreadsheet if it doesn't, but it should all then calculate at the very top. What are you paying for annually? And so instead of thinking this whole thing is going to last for a month or 3 months, think ahead and think about, how is this going to happen if it's a year from now? What are your annual costs? And if you have an accountant or a CPA, then use them. I'm sure they can give you these projections, but figure out what is it that you, what's your cost of staying in business today or 4 weeks ago. And then the second one, you're going to copy and paste all of those to the second one. But then I want you to take out all the things that you don't have to pay for. So if you have a subscription that you don't actually really use, or if you have a, anything. If there's anything at all on your expenses that you don't actually use or you don't have to use, like for example, scheduling software to schedule your workers to do your events. Well, you don't really have any events right now, so you might be able to put that on pause or delete it and come back to it. So what are the absolute expenses that you have to pay for every single month? So that you're thinking in 2 weeks when my payroll goes out, or in 4 weeks when my rent or your mortgage is due, you know exactly what you need to bring in profit-wise and what you have savings to pay for. And so I hope that's helpful for you. Again, if there's any issues with the spreadsheet, please let me know, but there shouldn't be. And then I would be doing a disjustice to you if I did not talk to you about all the government aid that our government is giving out. And so I did some more research last night on the government aid because it seems to be changing very rapidly. But a few things. So the SBA is the Small Business Administration. That's the government entity to where they help small businesses when they need help. And so prior to this happening, you could have submitted for an SBA loan, a government-funded loan, that you might have had a higher percentage interest rate that you would have had to pay back. Some companies start their companies because of an SBA loan to start their company. Well, they also have what's called an EIDL loan, an Economic Injury Disaster Loan. So this is when something happens in our economy, whether it be a flood or a tornado or a hurricane, something like that happens, or a global pandemic. And so a few months ago or a month ago when Tennessee, Nashville had all of their tornadoes, they got EIDL loans to cover their expenses or cover their damage that may have happened. Well, the COVID-19 that's happening right now, that is also considered an economic injury disaster. And so you can go on and apply for these loans. The nice thing about the EIDL loan is that it is up to $2 million per small business, and a small business being categorized of under 500 employees, which I believe everybody falls under that bracket if you're here today. And then it's long-term payments with, I believe, and I talked to my loan officer about this earlier today because I want to make sure I was giving you accurate information. The first 12 months would be no payments, and then you get an extended amount of time to pay it off up to 30 years, kind of like a home mortgage, but you can have up to $2 million and spread out the payments. And then it's open to, so a couple of weeks ago, they were slowly releasing states and counties on all of this. Well, now it's open to all U.S. residents in counties and cities. So if you are residing in the U.S., you should be able to go on and apply for that. The interest rate is super low For businesses like ours, it's a 3.75% for an interest rate. If you happen to have a nonprofit, it's 2.75. So it's incredible. Most credit cards are like 12% and up. So having this loan is incredible. And then there is called a CARES Act, and this came out more recently. In fact, if you have applied for an SBA loan already prior to today or yesterday, you should have received an email saying that you can apply for $10,000 to be direct deposited into your account. At what time, I don't know. But you should be able to apply for that. And I think you can still apply for it even if you don't have an application with the SBA loan. And it does not affect your SBA loan application if you haven't been accepted yet. And that is in the form of a grant. You don't have to pay that back, which is awesome. Thanks, Trump. And then there is a stimulus package. So this is based on your expenses more recently. So they were going to say it's off of 2018 expenses. However, I think they realized that most companies have grown more within the last 2 years. So they're bumping that up. And then the expense would be your only expense to pay back some of that is the interest rate. And so if you have $500,000 worth of expense for the year, and you take out a loan to pay for that for a year, you would only have to pay back the interest rate that you took out on it. And everything else at the end of 2020 would be looked at as a grant instead of an actual loan. And it covers your mortgage or your rent, your utilities, your payroll, things that are hard costs for you to stay in business. And then another great thing, which I know a lot of us in the industry have, is independent contractors. And so most of us have not been scheduling our independent contractors because there's no work to be done. Right now, they can actually apply for unemployment, whereas on a normal basis, they would not be able to file for unemployment. That's usually only for employees. And so your independent contractors, all of your delivery help or things like that, they can now apply for unemployment and get up to $600 per week on the federal level. Your state also might have something for them as well, and they can combine the two. So I encourage you to look at that. All of this is from my loan officer, but I would highly recommend that you go look for a loan officer. If you go through the SBA website, they can get you in contact with someone, or if you bank somewhere, they should have a loan officer with you as well, as long as they are FID something, accredited. So I encourage you to look into it. It's super helpful for small business, and I'm so thankful that they're doing that because I think thousands and thousands of small businesses are going to be saved because of that.
Yeah, and Cam, I was going to say, I mean, small business SBA loans have the reputation of being extremely difficult, very cumbersome, taking a very long time, requiring a lot of paperwork. They're really trying to expedite this right now for small businesses. I think Cam's applied for it. I've applied for it. If I made, it took me about 30 minutes. I needed things like my tax returns. My banker sent me kind of a list of things this morning that I was going to run through real quickly and kind of share with you guys of just, I know it can be a little overwhelming going to a website and applying for a loan, but I was pleasantly surprised at how easy it was. I know there's some wait times with uploads because a lot of people are trying to do it. But I would absolutely encourage you to do it. And if you get to the end of it and it's not what you want to do, you can always say, I'm not interested. But going ahead and getting in line, seeing what seeing what's available to you in your business. The government is pushing a lot of money into the economy right now to help float small businesses. And like Cam said, a lot of this is in the form of a grant or a forgivable loan, which means you're not having to put up personal collateral or make personal guarantees. And what that means is I'm not having to put up the mortgage to my home to take out a loan. And that's huge because traditionally, in order to take out a loan for your business, you do have to put up collateral or make a personal guarantee that you'll pay it back. And for a portion of the loan, if you're using it towards mortgages or utilities or your payroll, and keep in mind, payroll can be if you're a single business owner. I mean, you pay yourself. So I have a lot of friends who own their own businesses that don't have employees that are also applying for this loan to help cover their expenses because they can't pay themselves because they don't have any revenue coming in right now. So I would highly encourage anyone who's a small business who's US based to check this out. And we're actually trying to gather more information internationally for some of our international students, because I know other countries are trying to provide the same type of stimulus, and we'll send that out once we have some more information coming down the pipeline for international wedding professionals.
Yeah, it's incredible. Highly encourage you to look at it. And then the last part I have is any cute questions that you might have regarding really anything. It doesn't have to be related to mindset or perspective, but if you have any questions on maybe a situation that you're going through, or how to handle maybe, anything really. I can tell you that I have had, before all of this, I had 11 employees. And we've done some certain things to help out on that. But know that any question is acceptable, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have. So feel free to put those in.
Well, we're going to give you guys a couple minutes to submit any questions you have for Cam. But in the meantime, Cam and I were kind of talking about this earlier, and in the conversation we had last week, is that we've both had businesses during recessions before, and this is a very unique situation in that even during the recession, in 2008, weddings did take a hit, but I would say maybe 10, 15%. It wasn't a huge impact like we're seeing now. Kind of like Cam said, it wasn't like we woke up the next day and literally everything was off the books. But on the flip side of that, and what I've really been trying to encourage our community, and kind of what I've been holding on to, is the fact that when we get back to normal life, weddings are going to come back with a boom. There are going to be so many weddings happening in such a short period of time, because people are going to be so motivated and excited about getting married because they've had to push their plans off, that there's going to be more demand than ever for wedding professionals and wedding businesses. And so I think all of us are just trying to figure out a way, okay, well, how can we hold on between now and then? Because we do know weddings will come back. They're not going away. There will be a light at the end of the tunnel. And that's kind of my hope for you guys, is to figure out, kind of use some of the tools that Cam has shared with us today around mindset and perspective, and planning your business expenses, the idea soup, to kind of figure out how can you position yourself so that when weddings come back, because they will, that you'll be ready. And I think you're taking the first step by getting on webinars and educating yourself and planning for the future. So I just want to give you guys a couple more minutes to answer any questions. Like Cam said, she's also available on email. She's on Instagram. I'm going to put up your Instagram handle as well, Cam, so people can check you out. Oh, there you go. Perfect. She's got to go. One step ahead of me. But
yeah, feel free to email me if you have something that you just want to email instead of put in here. You're welcome to email me. I also have my personal cell phone up here. Feel free to text me or call. I'm happy to jump on a phone call. I have a little bit more time now than I typically do. And then Beautiful Event Rentals, that is our business Instagram, and so you're welcome to go on there. We put out some helpful content weekly, sometimes daily. And then my personal Instagram, where I've been talking more about the education and where we're going with that. So feel free to follow us on there, or ask questions, or share with a friend that you might think needs this as well.
And for those of you who are joining us that signed up through If I Made, we've got another webinar on Wednesday with Tanae Sanders at the Strategy Studio. She's going to be talking about how do you market in a time with COVID. Is it okay to market my services? Is it wrong? Am I being tone deaf? I think this is something we've all been a little bit apprehensive about, and kind of tiptoeing around of, can I even talk about my business right now with everything that's going on? So Tanae's coming on to talk about that and give you guys some ideas on, how can we get back to this new, or kind of assimilate into this new normal for now, and still run our businesses and plan ahead for the future. So we hope you guys join us for that. And we will be sending out a replay link later of Cam's class as well, and adding it to the free learning library. If you aren't already a member of that, it's free. You can go to ifimade.com and sign up to get access to a bunch of free classes. But Cam, thanks again for this presentation, for this class. It was awesome.
Yeah.
And just for bringing all your thoughts around how to overcome hardship, because I think when you've been an entrepreneur for a long time, this isn't the first rodeo. We're going to get through this. There will be a light at the end of the tunnel. There is hope.
Right. Well, thank you all for being here. I appreciate it. And I can't wait to see you on Instagram.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.